Thank you everyone for joining us today. We have Matt Sommer, who is with us. He's the former senior technology architect for Tesla, Case alum, and we also have Nicholas Kernan, who is a Case Western Reserve University student pursuing his BS in computer science. If you have any questions, we're going to ask that you please put those in the chat, and Nicholas will help answer those and feed them over to Matt. But with that, I'll hand it over to Nicholas to take it from here.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm a sophomore. I'm majoring in computer science. I also currently have a job at Roadprints, which is a startup company. And what they're pretty much trying to do is automate road paintings, like a right turn arrow on a street. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll read them. I'll ask you if you would like to unmute yourself and read it yourself. Otherwise, I'll read it out loud. So my first question is just going to be, could you introduce yourself and tell us where you are today and how you got there?
Sure, yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Matt Sommer. I'm a Case alumni. I graduated in 2007 with a mechanical engineering degree. I am currently living in California, and I am currently working for a pharmaceutical research, clinical research company called Velas Biosciences, where we provide clinical research services and technology for clinical research and therapeutics. I was formerly at Tesla, worked at GoPro. I've worked in, I think I'm up to about 8 or 9 startups now.
Wow.
So I have quite a lot of startup experience, and absolutely love it. Love the challenge, work too many hours. So it's a brief overview of me. And, to answer the question, how did I to get where I am today? I actually really enjoy that question because when I started at Tesla, one of the kind of the interview requirements was that you had to write 2 essays, 500 words each. And at the time, I think when I joined, I was about employee 800. And supposedly Elon would read most of them, or at least peruse them. And so you would have to submit these essays, and with the foreknowledge that Elon might be reading it. I know for a fact that early on in the company, he would read all of them, and even comment on them. But one of the questions was, how did you get to where you are today? And I absolutely love that question because it's broad, but it really makes you think back on kind of the steps that got you to the moment you're in at that time. And I have to say, without a doubt, I got here today, from just, working hard and just striving to just do better. A big part of that was actually getting in a Case. I was actually waitlisted at Case. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, was waitlisted at Case, and I didn't really have a lot of other options with going to college. And I got in, and barely. And so I was very fortunate. And, while I was at Case, I had to work really hard to make sure I got good grades. And, to be blunt, I wasn't an A student, I was a B student. But part of that, me having to work hard then, kind of reinforced me having to work hard later in my career. And, just from, trying to do my best and working hard and putting in the hours and caring about my work has got me to where I am today.
Okay. So it looks like we have a question from Igor. Sorry if I pronounced that. Okay. He asked for me to read the question. So Igor says, "Hi, Matt, super cool background. Are you originally from the West Coast, or did you move there after graduating? Do you think you got the opportunities that you had because of being on the West Coast?
Great question. I'm actually originally from Ohio. I grew up in Amish country on a farm in Worcester, Ohio. I went to Case, obviously, and then after I graduated, I moved to California. When I was at Case, I was fortunate enough to get an internship, a summer internship in Los Angeles, and that was the first time I had ever been to California, and fell in love with it and moved out here. So I've been out here for about 11 years now. I would say definitely it's definitely part of, being out here in California. It has quite a large, state GDP. There are a lot of opportunities out here just because of the sheer size of the state. And especially there's just a lot of people out here who are, really, really passionate about the startup world. That being said, I think there's opportunities everywhere, and it doesn't really matter where you are, because especially nowadays with the pace at which technology is growing, and the fact that we can have these sessions with each other no matter where people are. I think I have friends from even in Pakistan that are joining this session. So I don't think you have to, where you are is not going to dictate opportunity. It definitely helps. But I think it's more of what opportunity you make for yourself is really more important.
Mm-hmm. So we don't have any further questions in the chat right now. So I'll just take a moment to mention that you can post your LinkedIn profile in the chat if you want to make connections with other people. I posted mine. Hold on. Okay, so a question popped up just now. It's from Robert. Would you like to read the question yourself?
Yeah, so Matt, I was going to say you were at Tesla at an exciting time, but when isn't it exciting there, right? Oh my God.
Yeah.
My wife is screaming that we sold their stock 3 months ago. Isn't that unbelievable?
It is unbelievable.
But so you were there as a senior technology architect. Could you tell us what you did in that position? Yeah,
so my degree is in mechanical engineering, and after I graduated, I got a job in basically a software company that developed mechanical design software. It's called CATIA. So I was a consultant for multiple companies working on CATIA, and Tesla uses CATIA for doing all their 3D modeling of the vehicle, so their 3D design. And so that kind of helped me get a job at Tesla, was working on their 3D modeling software. So I was responsible for CATIA, a lot of the 3D tools that the company used. And definitely I was there at an exciting time, because when I got there, they were transitioning from the Roadster, which was their first car, which was more of a kit car that was not really meant to be mass produced. So when I got there, I kind of helped build a lot of the internal tools to help them transition from kind of the smaller production run of vehicles to the large volume Model S. And so and one thing I want to be clear on is there was a team effort. We had a fantastic team of people that was working on these systems, but I helped with the 3D modeling tools, the document revisioning tools, so revising specifications, and one of probably the proudest thing I did was work on some of our productivity tools there, and that's when I started transitioning out of the mechanical world into productivity and just internal operations, business operations. They use a tool called Jira, which some of you may have heard of. I'm a huge fan of it. But I was responsible for basically growing that tool from being used by a small group of teams to basically being used by all of vehicle engineering, all of manufacturing, all of design. And that's where I really started branching out in my career. And it was something that wasn't, wasn't asked for me to do. It was kind of actually outside of my job description, and my boss actually got, I think, a little angry at me. But I helped set up a lot of the productivity systems and the way that the teams collaborated and worked together, especially since Tesla is such a global team and have so many different facilities now. I helped set up the way that they all work together and how the teams coordinate themselves.
Huh. And why did you like that role as opposed to more of a mechanical engineering role?
It gave me the opportunity to see a bigger breadth of the company. I started when I first got to Tesla. I was working a few years, doing the CAD and the what's called PLM, product lifecycle management. It was great, and it was good opportunity to learn how you use documents, or how people collectively develop IP with specifications and documents, because there's a lot of IP in these documents that you create. That was fantastic, but I wanted to branch out, and I wanted to see a bigger breadth of operations of the company. And so it gave me that opportunity to do that, because I got to interface with, I don't know, 100 teams, and learn how each of those teams worked, and then try to understand how an individual team would work, how a functional unit would work, and then I would try to understand how that team could then work with another team that's a different function, but they have to work together somehow. So I just wanted to expand that. And honestly, talking about the Tesla stock, I left in 2015 because I wanted to get into entrepreneurship, and I wanted to start companies and challenge myself in ways that I wasn't, getting challenged at Tesla. And so I left. And I absolutely don't regret it, because I've learned quite a lot about startups and entrepreneurship and the experience I wouldn't have gotten. But the stock price definitely hurts a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now that you've moved on from Tesla, why don't we take a moment to talk about what you're currently doing, which is you're at Velas Bioscience. So why don't you take a moment to explain what it is that you're doing there, and why their mission inspires you?
Yeah. So I recently joined Velas in April. It's we work in the life sciences. We work in the clinical research, specifically more around more like rare or orphan diseases. We kind of have two groups of the company. We're a small startup, but we kind of have two kind of main areas that we're focusing on. One is like clinical services. So we help pharmaceutical companies with performing drug trials. So like we're working on a phase 3 trial right now for a disease called Canavan's disease, which is a congenital disorder. And so we're helping that group with their study and defining the study. And I'm pretty new to the life sciences world, but so that we have scientists that are working on that. Where I come in is we also provide software for operating these trials. And this actually kind of relates to my experience at Tesla with like data and managing large amounts of data. We help with collecting information from patients and from, what's called clinical outcome assessments. So we help, we're building software tools like a iPad app and a web app where we collect data on like how a patient might be feeling or different what are called assessments or scales to measure whether they're improving or not. And so my title is Director of Technology. I'm responsible for all of our technology, from our iPad app, our web app, our servers, all of our IT department. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a new thing for me. I didn't really expect to kind of get into this world, but I'm absolutely loving it. There's a huge, I'm anticipating a very huge shift in that world with technology, especially with the pandemic going on right now. A lot of studies had to be halted, or they had to adjust to deal with remote assessments. So previously, before the pandemic, a patient would go into a hospital or some facility to do these assessments. But now with the pandemic, they can't do that. They can't interact with each other. So one of the big things that we're doing is facilitating remote assessments. So we're using, teleconference tools to help connect a patient in their home with a specialist in their home. And one of the things we do is we have iPads that we provide to the patients that we ship to them with a tripod. And then we install our software on the iPad. And so then the patients can just put this up in their home and have a teleconferencing with the remote assessor. And for me, that's super cool that we're able to leverage technology to like keep these studies going. But then we're also seeing even better results from it, because some of these patients would go into a facility and that can cause a change in their behavior, because it can be a little anxiety inducing if you're walking into a hospital. There's a certain way that your mind might think if you go into a facility like that. Whereas these people are in their home now, and they're in a setting that they're comfortable with, and all they have to do is put up an iPad, which they might already be comfortable with anyway, because they potentially have an iPad at home. So now they're much more in a relaxed setting, more comfortable, because they're in their environment that they're used to, and so we're seeing some pretty good results because of that.
So I'm sorry to backtrack a little bit, but Badar had a question in the chat about your role at Tesla. So would you like to ask that yourself, or?
Yeah, sure. Although it feels kind of awkward to go back to the previous topic, but anyways,
it's okay.
I'll do that. So I was just wondering, so because we at Case mostly use Solidworks for our modeling simulation stuff. So did your work at Tesla involve what portion of it was like just the mechanical design of it? What portion of it was like simulation through CATIA, and what was it more like the artistic side of the design? Like were you even involved with the artistic aspect of it, or were you more on the engineering side of things? So I'm just curious how those roles divide in like a design that is that complex and big, and
Yeah. Actually, that was actually a big part of what my job was trying to figure out how to orchestrate all those different tools and analyses together, so that way the company as a whole could produce something very valuable. We definitely utilize different tools depending on the application. So Solidworks is a great tool. I love it. It's awesome, but it's limited. It can only, you're gonna hit a ceiling depending on what you're trying to do. Like very rarely, maybe nowadays you can do this, but back then you couldn't put an entire vehicle in SolidWorks. It'd be difficult. There's ways you can try to optimize, and there's workarounds and things you can do, but at the end of the day, it's not really worth it. And that's where a tool like CATIA comes in, where CATIA has these bigger breadth of capabilities. A big part of them are the simulations. So CATIA internally has some great simulation tools that you can add on to it, but then also exporting data to simulate in other tools and then re-importing was always a big part of it. And the original Roadster was done in SolidWorks, and then we had a pretty big transition in the company from to a lot of people using SolidWorks to having to use this new tool, and that's partly where I came in as well. And there are, on the artistic side, the design side, there are some very specialized tools that are specifically made for doing what's called Class A surfacing on a car. So it's like the very high-end surface design work. That's where CATIA is very good at it, but there's also some other tools that are better. So that was part of my job, was just like, how do we get all these tools coordinating with each other? How do you get a good data flow all the way from an initial sketch all the way to a vehicle being manufactured? It's basically all about moving data and keeping the data flowing freely and in a clean and organized way.
Yeah, and I see now that actually they're both owned by the same company, Dassault Systems. So maybe that has part of it to do with why SolidWorks is not able to do stuff that CATIA is, because they probably don't want to, hurt the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a good thing, because there needs to be tools that are, CATIA is complex and it has a lot of bells and whistles, and it can be very daunting for a lot of people. And so having a tool like SolidWorks is really nice, and it's a lot cheaper. So we would try to be careful about we would never allow SolidWorks to be used for the actual modeling of the car, the main car, because it's too hard to integrate. But for things like tooling and one-off items, we would promote using SolidWorks, because the licenses are cheaper, and we don't need an expensive high-end license to design a small tooling in manufacturing. So it has its place, and I like it. It's just meant for certain size of design or company.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, yep. So now we have a question in the chat from India. I'll give you a moment if you would like to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So you mentioned that you were a serial entrepreneur. In my experience, starting one company is really hard at times. So was starting your second, third company, etc., did the process get easier? What did the exit process look like, if there was one, when moving from one company to the other? So essentially, just what did that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say it's definitely hard, but it's getting easier and easier. I think, the first company that I really started trying to do something with was probably like 2003, 2004, something like that. But I'm learning that it's getting easier and easier. And what really excites me currently about specifically working with Velas is that all the experience, all the hard times that I had 6-7 years ago have really enabled me now to be highly productive and highly efficient in my work with Velas. And what I'm learning is that each time that I've gone out of my way to work hard and work on something that's nights and weekends, that's better enabled me for the next thing, and it keeps building on itself. And I look back at the time, when I look back and I see how hard it was before and how little I knew. I look back, and that's why I'm laughing, because I think about 7 or 8 years ago when I was kind of fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out what to do, and but just trying it, right? Like, it was one of those things where, in a way, that you're not. It's hard, and that it's you don't necessarily know what you're doing, but that's the point of it, and that's what you're doing, is you're figuring it out. And I haven't had a full exit from a company that I founded yet. But I know that based on, it's a matter of time, because I know each time that I do this, I've learned what not to do and what to do. And it's helping me the next thing. It's helping with the next thing. And I can just see it compounding now. And so my recommendation to you is that, yeah, it might be hard and you may not know what you're doing, but just keep doing it, and keep trying, and be okay with that fact that you don't know what you're doing, because a lot of other people don't either. And the point is that it's a journey, and you're doing it for the journey as well as the destination.
Okay, so it looks like we have another question from Mesbal. Sorry about your name. I'll give you a moment if you would like to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Nicholas. Hi, Matt. I had a question about, it was something you said, that you provide iPad and tripod to the patient so that you have the telecommunication. I was wondering, like, that also brings some challenges, like maintaining the cost as well as the price of the service that you are providing, as well as the patients might already be sick. So how do you deal with, like, helping the patients to communicate with the cost?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, you know, we had to factor in, but with the shift to remote assessments, it's actually kind of a wash because we're actually saving money more on the clinical side. So there is a cost factor that has to be factored. That is, you know, in addition to the study. So it's not necessarily the cheapest option, but in the grand scheme of it works out.
Okay, so sticking with the Velas topic, so why don't we talk about, so first of all, I'd like to know, like, when was it started, and like, where was it when it started, and where is it now?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah, I think they're approximately about 2 years old, and I came in at an interesting time. Part of the reason for me coming in is to actually help get them. We're right on the edge of kind of. I try not to be too boisterous here, but like, popping. We're cash flow positive. We haven't raised money yet. We have recurring revenue. We're in a really good situation right now. I came in as a technologist. I'm the head technologist now in the company, and I'm helping kind of transition us from kind of the early initial customers where we're very targeted to focusing on individual customers and transitioning to building our tools and our systems so that we can scale appropriately. And that's a big part of what I did at Tesla, was just to help us go from you're building the one-off roadsters to mass production of a vehicle. And so Velas, that's part of what I'm doing and coming in as a very early employee.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing is, so obviously if it's 2 years old, then it had been around for a little bit before the COVID pandemic. So I'm wondering, how bad was the shift? Like, what changes did your company need to make, and how rough was that?
Internally for us, we're predominantly a remote company. So internally, there wasn't a lot of shift, but for our customers, there was a very big shift. And it's kind of like, there's been a lot of churn in the industry because of this. And a lot of people were just not anticipating something like this. And so we're getting very heavily into like I said, the remote assessments and the telehealth and telemedicine. And I personally am anticipating a very big shift in the health industry and clinical research because of this. It's accelerating everything just 10 times because having to use these telemedicine tools and these teleconferencing tools is just changing the way health industry works, because a big part of these tools is security and compliance with the data and the patient health information. So, it's critical that we are able to implement these systems in a secure and safe way for our customers. Luckily, there's a lot of technology that's becoming available and maturing, that's really helping us kind of enable our customers to have this big shift to the remote world. And there's a lot of technology that's feeding in on itself that just for example, these conferencing tools, how mature they're getting and how fast they're changing because of the huge influx of people using them. And it's actually making my job a lot easier, because 10 years ago, when you'd have to try to explain a new tool or train someone on a tool, it could be quite difficult. Nowadays, people are getting so accustomed to technology and iPads and web conferencing tools that I'm amazed at how easy it is actually, and people are just getting it. Where it's like 10 years ago, it was a little bit more of a struggle. So luckily there's that, but it's been tough for a lot of people to do this shift. I also think that there's also a big change in the health industry just because of this data shift, that there's a lot more data available that can be used to do analysis that just wasn't there before. And so that's another good thing that's actually coming out of this.
Okay, so there's a lot of ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we have another question from Badar, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. So given that you have a lot of startup and entrepreneurship experience, I myself am interested in going that route. So my question was that, so to somebody who's just starting out, would you recommend like just getting straight into developing your own startup right off the bat, or first, like I guess you did something similar, is like getting experience with existing companies or existing startups first, and then look into going into something that's like your own, or like much more in the initial phases of development?
So I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. So I think you can go either route, and there's ways to be successful in either direction. But I will say that in my experience, I think it was really valuable for me to go out into industry first. And I was particularly fortunate and lucky and worked hard to get a job at Tesla. And so having that opportunity to work there was profound. And so my recommendation would be to try to find a very solid, good company that you can work at and learn. Like, because the biggest thing for me was learning from other people. I mean, the things that I learned from like the hardworking, innovative people that work at Tesla was just amazing. And I think about it, how fortunate I was to get that opportunity to learn from them. Like, learning from other people is one of the best things that you can do. So whether you're working at a large company and like going that route first, learn from the people there. If you're starting a company and going from scratch first, right off the bat, talk to people, learn from other people. It's harder because you're going to have to network, and you're going to have to go to these sessions or meet up with people. But you need to talk to people. You need to bounce ideas off of them. You need to learn from other people. So either route you go, the key thing is talk to people and learn from other people, because someone else probably has some really good, useful information that's going to save you a ton of time or help you make a wise decision. So either way, go that route. But one thing I would say that, and it's helped me, and this is probably the hard part and the not so fun part. I've almost always had some side job or side project. So even when I was at Tesla, technically I was only a contractor at GoPro, but I was moonlighting. So like I would be at Tesla during the day, and then I would moonlight at GoPro at night, and in the evenings. And just as a contractor, just doing some helping out with some things. But just having that, and then also I had a startup on the side too while I was at Tesla. So my recommendation would be, if you can handle it, is get a full-time job where you're learning a lot, but then maybe start a side project and just build it over time. And be willing to invest 3 or 4 years into it, to take your time and learn on the side. Having two things going on, or two projects, has always been so helpful for me to learn. And then I feed back in the things that I learn on my side projects into my main job. And it's always been helpful.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, so before you started talking about the whole like doing a main job and a side project thing, you were also stressing the importance of networking. So I was wondering if you had like a specific example of that, where it was like, because I talked to this guy on this day, I got this opportunity, which led to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got a job at Velas right now, actually. I was working at this company called Phoenix Payments, which just raised $100 million. So I was working there, and my coworker said, "Hey, my cousin needs some advice on some technology things. Would you be willing to get coffee with them?" So I got coffee with him, and we ended up chatting for I think 3 or 4 hours, and helped him with some technology questions and things. And I ended up helping him on the side as a side project for free. Just helping him build a little app that he could show for some demos and for some conferences. Did it completely free. I probably put about 80 or 100 hours into that. That was about 3 years ago. And, fast forward to this year, and because of that work, they reached out to me when they're like, we're in a situation where we need a technology specialist. We're growing, and we have customers now, and we have revenue, but we need someone who's really deep into technology. And then that's how I got this job. So if I hadn't, maybe I would have it stumbled into me somehow anyway, but because I did that coffee meetup, and because I did some of that free side work, just to, honestly, it was more for fun. It got me this job.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question in the chat from Tree. I'll give you a few seconds if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Matt, for speaking today. I'm a law and business student at Case, so I'm not sure if you can speak about this or not, but from a legal standpoint, were there any hurdles or regulatory roadblocks that the startups you've worked at have encountered, or, before COVID or even after, with the new health regulations and things like that?
I don't want to get into any specifics, but definitely. I personally, I've tended to work in like very high tech or like highly regulated industries. I'm not sure why, because they're particularly difficult. But there's always that is a huge thing, and I personally, it's an area that I would like to work on myself. Because my background is more technology and yes, IT and servers and programming and things like that. And I think one of the areas I need to get better at is just understanding the legal and contractual obligations that we have. It's a job in its own, honestly. And so what I've learned though is, going back into the network thing, is that it's so important to network with people that are not necessarily in your lane. So networking with people like you who have experience or are studying it and working hard on it, because you, as an entrepreneur, you can't do everything. You're gonna want to try to, and part of the fun is the learning, and so you're gonna want to like try to do all these different things and learn, but definitely try to lean on people and other resources to help you in those areas. And one of the big ones for us, for that it's helped me, that's relatively new methodologies, is these online legal services companies, like LegalZoom, or I've used UpCounsel quite a bit. Tremendously helpful. It really helps me feel like I've covering my bases, because I can post a job, to write a contract or an NDA or review a contract or anything, and then get a bid on it, and get a lawyer actually helping out. It's been tremendously helpful, and I highly recommend it.
Okay, so now we have a question from Robert.
Hey, man, it looks like quite a leap from electric cars to pharmaceuticals. Was it for you?
Yes and no, actually, particularly because what we're specializing in is data collection and data management with our software. And what's actually kind of interesting to me now that I'm getting my feet under me in this world is seeing the similarities in how we manage data at Tesla and how we're trying to manage data for our patients. It particularly because I'm working in computer engineering and working on computer systems and data systems, the transition for me has not been so bad. I think if you were a different type of role, a different type of if you had a different career, it might not be so easy. Because obviously, if I was designing doors at Tesla, transitioning to pharmaceuticals would probably just not happen.
Okay. Well, I understand. So you were president of your frat at Case?
Yep.
I wonder if that has anything to do with your kind of like interest in seeing how the whole orchestra works.
That's awesome that you brought that up, because absolutely. Working in a fraternity, and specifically just not even just being president, but like having some sort of leadership role at a fraternity was absolutely helpful in my entrepreneurship endeavors and business endeavors, because there's social fraternities, but there's structure to the organizations, and there's bylaws and leadership hierarchy, and that was tremendously helpful for me to learn how to organize people, because a big part of founding a company is understanding how people work together and how they are organized. You might have some idea that like some technology or some business model or something that's kind of new and interesting, and that's great, but at the end of the day, you need people to implement it and operate that company. And so being involved in the fraternity was so helpful to like understand how to get people to work together. And it was really good that that the fraternity system at Case was, in my opinion, really good. I enjoyed it, and I think I look back fondly at some of the experiences that we had, as like with Greek Week and things like that, and it was a really good experience.
Okay, so before I get back to the chat, I'd like to stay on this leadership topic for a bit. So you've had a lot of leadership positions, especially at Tesla. So I was wondering, like, how did you establish yourself early on as a great leader? And what would you recommend for other people in this dialogue who also want to be leaders?
Excellent question.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I started at Tesla, I mean, with my time at Tesla, I was relatively, inexperienced and young person, right? Like it was my second job out of college. And starting there, I was, relatively young. So there was a certain place on the totem pole. Definitely, though, I'm a huge believer in leading by example and leading by example, in that there's different ways to lead, and there's different ways to get respect from people. And for me, it was always about working hard and trying to do the right thing. And actually, something I'm learning recently with some of the last few projects I've worked on is patience with people. I think it can be very easy to be judgmental or be upset if that someone that you're working with is not maybe performing their best, or you think that you could do a better job, or someone else, well, that other person does it better than that person. Well, why don't we just get them to do it? You have to be patient. You have to understand that everyone is going through something, or someone hopefully they're trying hard, but you have to be patient with them and help support them to do a good job. It doesn't help if someone is assigned a task and they're responsible for completing that task. It doesn't help if you're negative about it or saying, like, well, I know better people that could do this, or whatever. If that person's meant to do that task, support them and help them complete that task. And if you know that they could be doing it better, give them constructive feedback in a patient and polite way to say, like, hey, maybe if you did it this way, it'd go a little better, something like that. And part of being a leader is being patient and with those people, and they'll really respect you if you take an approach of helping them and supporting them versus being negative and saying, there's 100 negative things you could say. But the more difficult and better route would be to be patient and helpful and support them, and then they'll respect you for that, and then all of a sudden you're a leader, and people look to you then for advice, and look to you for your help and getting them through hard problems.
Yeah, so staying positive. So I'll go back to the chat now. We had a question from Chaitanya. I'll give you a moment. Okay, I guess I'll read it myself. Couple questions on Veale, RWE outcomes and its use in getting therapies approved and reimbursed.
Honestly, I'm not sure I can really answer that, because a big part of what we do is just support the companies that are collecting these outcomes and assessing them and understanding if the efficacy of a therapy. So the company I work at, that's further down the line than where we're involved. What we do is help run an efficient study and then help make sure we collect data efficiently and electronically. So that way we have the data available to then, do analysis and analysis of the outcomes. So it's not really an area that we're in.
Hello. Sorry, this is Chet. I'm back online now. That's a great answer, Matt, and this has been an excellent session so far. My question was focused on real world data and outcomes, and have you seen any practical applications for it? I know that Genentech and some of these bigger companies have used it in the past to reimburse some of their therapies and also potentially expand their labels and whatnot. So are you seeing any opportunities, especially something like the FDA being more open to accepting some of these outcomes data to, I don't know, maybe have like a control arm based out of real world evidence, or maybe even reimburse some of these therapies effectively? You don't have to be specific. I totally understand the nature of your job, but on a very high level, are you seeing any roadblocks and opportunities? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'll answer a little bit more broadly, just because it's anything you mentioned FDA, it's a complex thing, and there's quite a lot of standard operating procedures of dealing with them, and working in this industry since it's so highly regulated. I think in broad strokes, I think that there is, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, there's going to be a huge shift in the pharmaceutical and health world. I mean, this is kind of like obviously, but because of technology moving so quickly and the ways that computers can analyze data, we're kind of at an inflection point right now where the more traditional ways of collecting data, because previously the way to do it, and still is today, is use paper. And it's like literally you print out a form that asks question, like a questionnaire form, and you fill out that piece of paper and then you scan it. A lot of research is done that way, and because of the way that's done, it's made on paper, and it's made to be a simple form because humans know how to do that. It's very simple to have a piece of paper, you read it, and then you write something down, and then that's it. So I think there's going to be a very big shift in the way that data is collected. It's going to change the way that data is collected. So instead of collecting data on paper, it's going to be collecting data through video or audio, or different, and applying different machine learning or AI techniques. And I don't talk about it too much, but we are getting into that world. So we're partnering with a few organizations to get into the AI world, because it's about to be very big. It already is, but it's going to get even bigger. So I can't answer the question directly, but other than saying that, with the speed that technology is improving, the whole the whole industry is going to look completely different in 10 years.
Great, thank you. Just a small question, and I promise this is the last one. Are you seeing any backlash or friction from physicians and/or patients? Because for the longest time, healthcare has been, very slow in adopting some of these really cool technologies. And thanks to folks like you, you're introducing it to us. So are you seeing any friction from the medical community and/or from the patients?
Not really, actually. I mean, it's kind of amazing. That's part of the reason why I think everything is going at ultra speed right now, is that there's kind of this understanding that, we're in a pandemic and that there's, a certain allowance with everyone that, we need to kind of change the way that we're working, and that the old way is gone. And that, now it's time to learn these new tools. And I think we're to the point where, because of like Apple, iPads and Galaxy notepads and things becoming so ubiquitous, that people are getting much more comfortable with technology. So it hasn't been that bad, actually. I mean, there's been some hiccups, but it's, normal, nothing that's like too bad. But because of this kind of feeling that, all right, we all need to work together to like get through this, and we still need to be able to do our jobs. And I'm very lucky and fortunate to work in a technology industry where I'm employed, but we all need to shift to this environment, because if we want to be able to have work, then it has to happen. So it's been it's unfortunate the way this is happening, but the shift is amazing, and how fast it's just a global shift to this new reality.
Okay, so I'm glad that the chat is very active, but it looks like we're only going to have time for one more question, which is going to be from Miles. I'll give you a moment if you'd like to ask it yourself.
Sure. Hi. So I was just wondering why you decided to leave the previous companies you worked for. You mentioned that you left Tesla to work in more entrepreneurship, but I was just wondering why you also left other startups. Yeah, so you talk about that. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. They've all had different reasons. Some I look back and with hindsight think that it was one of the better decisions I made. Others I wish I would have maybe stuck out a little longer, and wish I had maybe taken a break and then gone back. But I left Tesla because I think I joined there was about employee like 750 or 800, something along those lines. And then when I left, it was 15,000 people. And I don't know what they're at now. It's probably like 60,000, 80,000, something like that. I don't even know. I shouldn't even guess. But I left part of the reason because it's like it started growing, and the initiative was to scale, right, and to build more cars to help with the transition to electric vehicles, which I fully support, and I love that. It's just I didn't want to be focus on one area of the company. I wanted to get more breadth of experience in somewhere else. So that's why I left. Another startup was really exciting. Is actually with another case grad. That one was really cool, but he, had a day job that was a really good day job, and it was a side project for him, and he always wanted it to be a side project, where I was looking for more of a full-time thing. And that's something that I personally have dealt with that a lot, because it's hard to found a startup if you're also having to have a day job to pay your bills. And some people they don't want to necessarily do the full startup where you're trying to raise money and go the all in. And so that's another reason why I left one of those, is just because I wanted to go all in and do it full bore, and the other person didn't, and that's totally fine. No ill will, but that's just the way it was. And so I decided to leave because it was just, our ambitions didn't align. and it was unfortunate, but it happens. And yeah, and then the other ones are just various reasons, and just trying to find where I was happy and fit well, and I just keep going. And I really enjoy what I'm doing now, and I think because I enjoy it because I worked so hard on those other startups, that it makes the job now a lot easier because I know what I'm doing and I know what to do, and it feels good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you for taking the time to speak to everyone today. You gave some really great advice. So now I'll give the floor back to Mr. D'Arglimo.
Thank you, Nicholas and Matt, for hosting today's session. I really appreciate the opportunity to have you come talk back at your alma mater. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a couple events next week. Forrest Faison, who's the former Surgeon General of the U.S. Navy, and he's also the Chief Healthcare Strategy Officer for Cleveland State University. He's going to talk on September 15th at 1 p.m. And then on September 16th from 4 to 5 p.m., we have Karen Spilzewski from Rivervest Venture Partners talking. Then on September 17th, we have the author of The Startup Community Way, Ian Hathaway, who's the Senior Executive Director of Techstars, talking at 10 a.m. So we have more events upcoming. If you just check the chat, I posted the link for registration for those. And thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week.